In this video, I'd like to talk about the CSS Box Model. So what we've got to start with here is just a basic HTML file, and inside the body element I've got a div which also has another div inside of it. So the outer div has a class of outer and the inner div has a class of inner. Coming over here to our style.css, you'll see that my body element has a background of black, and that's just to give our page some color. And then the outer div has a background of red. And then I've got a couple other properties inside here which we haven't talked about just yet. The border property will probably make pretty good sense to you. I'm just saying that for this element I want it to have a 2-pixel border, and I want that border to be dashed, and I want the color of the border to be yellow. Finally, for the inner div, I've got a background of blue, and I gave it an explicit height. Because if we don't give it an explicit height, then we won't see it on the screen. It would essentially collapse because there is no content inside of it. So let's take a look and see what we have in the browser. This is what we've got right now. And it looks like boxes within boxes. So what I want to do is I want to inspect this element, and to do this in the browser you can simply right click on it and then pull down your context menu to inspect. And we'll see over here that I've got some information about styling. So I'm currently on this inner element here, and it's telling me what are the styles that are being applied to that element. Well, there's also another tab here over on the right side called Computed, and if I click on that, it will show me some information about this particular element's sizing. So if I click on the inner part of this here, this is showing the content that's inside that inner box. Then I've got something outside here called padding, and you'll notice here that this is just a hyphen. So this particular element doesn't have any padding, and it also doesn't have a border either, nor does it have any margin. So let's talk about what these different things are. For each element, we have the inner content, so that's whatever is inside it, and that might be either text or some other content, some other HTML content. The padding is the area between the content and the border of the element. Okay, so sometimes there will be some padding, other times there will be none. In this particular case, there's no padding, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift what I'm looking at to the outer div so that we can look at that. And now we'll see things look a little bit different. So now on the inside of the element, the dimensions of that are 1302 pixels by 50 pixels, so it's 50 pixels tall, as I specified in the CSS style sheet. Then I've got this 20 pixels of padding here, which is between the content and the border. So that's the area outside the blue on the inside and inside that dashed yellow border. And then if I highlight here, that's showing me the actual border, which again is 2 pixels because that's how I set it. Finally, outside the element, I have this margin, which in this case is 20 pixels all around. And we can also specify individual margins. So if I wanted, say, the right-hand side margin to be larger, I could change that in the style sheet. So for my outer here, I'm going to say, after I specify a margin of 20, I'm going to say margin right and set that to 50 pixels. And let's see what that looks like. You can see that now my element has been pushed further over from the right-hand side of the screen. So if I highlight over this again, we'll see that we have 50 pixels of margin over on the right-hand side. So the way that this box model works is that for every single element on our page, we're going to have some dimensions representing the inner content of that element. We're going to have some dimensions representing the padding, if there is any, so it could be 0. The element is going to potentially have a border that could also be 0 if it doesn't. And then finally, an element is going to have some type of margin potentially which spaces it from other elements on the page. And you can think of this as looking at just a big picture frame.